Good morning. Isn't it wonderful to be in this room? I mean, this beats the school cafeteria, right? And isn't it wonderful for you, for your teachers, for your parents, your family, that you made it here? Now, you're all kind of nervous now because we're going into the next phase of the competition, and I can feel the creative and the competitive energy here. But if you just pause for a moment and say, what did it take to get here? We have 44 students here today. You competed against 30,000+ people statewide in the largest competition in the United States. So probably on the average, you have triumphed already at 800-to-1 odds. That's something to feel good about. And unless somebody in your high school has won the lottery, I think you've probably got the best track record, period. It's a pleasure to see a lot of you here because a number of you have already performed with me, but I will simply make this invitation. I've got 32 more counties to visit, and I'm also going to be revisiting a lot of counties. As I come into a county, I will invite you to perform with me, and I hope you'll be able to do it. In one case, I'm even bringing somebody into a different county because they can't make their own. But I would like for you to have another chance at a public forum where you live to strut your stuff. Now, you think you're glad to be here this morning. I'm glad that you're here this morning because 13 years ago when we created this program, it was the universal verdict of the advisors at the state system that this was a really bad idea. And they said it was a bad idea for 3 reasons. First, teenagers don't like poetry. Right? Secondly, they said, memorization and performance, this is repressive. Josie, did you see any repression in this room this morning? I mean, I was looking for it. What I saw was expression. What I saw was something that musicians, actors, performers realize, which is, in a sense, what art allows you to do is to take a vehicle in which you can express, enlarge, amplify, dramatize your own emotions, your own ideas. And this really gets back to what poetry is. Last night we had a wonderful sort of motivational talk about poetry, spoken arts, as this sort of cutting edge of the future. But what you're doing here is something that's both very ancient and very new. It goes back to the beginnings of human consciousness when we had no other technology but what existed in our bodies. And we took talk, speech, found ways of shaping it so that it could be powerful and memorable, so that it gave people a way of remembering what was important to know and to pass on. So you are part, as spoken word artists, of a tradition that's as old as humanity. And the value of it has been recognized at that time, which is, in a sense, by becoming a vessel for this art, you discover yourself and how to communicate yourselves to the world. I hope that that's been your personal journey in this competition. And that was the third reason that it wasn't going to work, because I was told that it was terrible to do arts in competition. Of course, that was before American Idol and things like this. But there's a special energy in this room. This is a way, in a sense, of developing and measuring your own excellence. And I think that that's part of it. And I think the audience probably picks that up too, which is having this as a competition gives it a special kind of energy. Now, I was raised in a family, and I think some of you probably have, where people were not native speakers of English, in a neighborhood where people were not native speakers of English. And what poetry gave me from the earliest time was a way, in a sense, of entering English and mastering it from the inside, which is something that, that wasn't available to me as easily, in my lives. So poetry was transformative to me. This program represents, as Larry said, an arts education program, which is the belief that as part of your education, we need to educate your creativity, your imagination, your emotions, as well as your analytical intelligence. I worry that we live in a country which does not value this, does not recognize that this is a fundamental part of what it takes for you all to become productive individuals in a complicated society. That if we educate you, or we pretend to educate you without educating your imagination, your emotions, your individuality, then we really haven't educated you. We haven't realized each of your individual potential. This is why Craig Watson has been extraordinary in this state. He's taken the California Arts Council and he has left it at the highest point it's had in its history, and he's understood the importance of arts education in this. We have at the moment a crisis on a national level in this country in which there are people who are questioning whether the National Endowment for the Arts and the National Endowment for the Humanities, incidentally, should continue. Are these good uses of taxpayers' dollars? To me, it's an unambiguous yes, that what we need at a national level is the recognition and the support to bring arts programs to every community in this country. And the NEA, on a relatively small budget, is doing this already. We are reaching almost everywhere. But I'd urge you in your own communities, and some of you probably even know how to use the internet. Put your zip code in, find out who your congressman or congresswoman is, press a little button, it'll say, "Write me." You'll have to then answer a question as to whether or not you are a computer. If you can successfully get this, you can then write a short note, to your person in the U.S. House of Representatives or the U.S. Senate to support this. I think it would be a wonderful thing if Congress actually heard from some of the students who experience and benefit from these programs. But anyway, this is a fight we're going to win. There's no question in my mind that there is a consensus in this country that this is not a partisan issue. This is simply good civic common sense. But I'd urge you, as young people who are about, or maybe some of you already have, to be old enough to vote, to enter into the democratic process in this very natural way on a very simple and unambiguous issue that doesn't matter what your politics are. This is something that I think all Americans can and should at this moment support. Now, but let me end with a poem, because actually, after all that being said, that's the capacity in which I speak to you this morning as the poet laureate of this wonderful state. I want to recite a poem about something that happened when I was about maybe a year or two older than you guys are. I was raised in a really urban part of LA. I'd never really seen nature till I was in college. And one day in spring, I drove up across the Golden Gate Bridge with a girl I was in love with. It was one of my many unsuccessful early romances. And for the first time, I saw what spring was. I was in a walk through a grove, and then 25 years later, I wrote this poem to the young lady who I'm sure doesn't even remember having been there. It's called The Apple Orchard. You won't remember it. The apple orchard we wandered through one April afternoon, climbing the hill behind the empty farm. A city boy, I'd never seen a grove burst in full flower or breathed the bitter, sweet perfume of blossoms mingled with the dust. A quarter mile of trees in fragrant rows arching above us, we walked the aisle, alone in spring's ephemeral cathedral. We had the luck, if I can call it that, of having been in love, but never lovers. The bright flame burning, fed by pure desire, nothing consumed, such secrets brought to light. There was a moment when I stood behind you, reached out to spin you toward me, but I stopped. What more could I have wanted from that day? Everything, of course. Perhaps that was the point, to learn that what we will not grasp is lost. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you.